So, welcome, everyone. And I think we do have a slight typo. This is the June agenda here. But anyway, I'll start with the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. And by the way, I formally call the meeting to order. So with that, why don't we move on to item number 2, which is a report from Hannah Sloan on jail inmate serious mental illness statistics and diversion options.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am the clinical program director for Lifeline Connections, and I oversee the jail behavioral health and reentry services program. And I have some data on individuals who are currently incarcerated with serious mental illness or SMI. And this is just kind of what I've gathered really quickly. So if there's anything that you would like in addition to this, please let me know and I'll do my best. But as of right now, of the individuals currently in custody, 31% have a known serious mental illness. And then out of those individuals with a serious mental illness, we have 80% who have at least one case open in Superior Court, and 42% have cases in multiple courts or jurisdictions. We're looking at potentially some diversion options for those individuals, and mental health sentencing alternative and mental health court are our primary options right now for those folks. So they might be eligible for one or the other depending on what their charges are. We have about 43% who are booked in for at least one violent crime. And for that, I'm seeing it as an assault second or higher, or any new sex offenses. And 42% have mainly property crimes or low-level assault crimes. So assault 3 against a healthcare worker, or assault 4, which is very broad in its definition, and people can be booked on it for multiple reasons. So varies based on who's in custody, but yeah, that's what I've got right now for kind of the diversion conversation. We have only a few people who are eligible for mental health court, and even fewer for mental health sentencing alternative. So any additional diversion programs would be very helpful. I noticed that we had a couple of people who are on electronic home detention for pretty significant charges, and they also have serious mental illness, but some people with similar charges are in custody instead of electronic home detention. So that's potentially an option that we could expand on. However, we know that the housing crisis is large in Whatcom County, and that's probably the main barrier for individuals being able to participate in diversion options. And then something to note as well, of the individuals with serious mental illness currently in custody.
Arlene had a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Arlene.
Arlene, you're muted.
My question is, what's the percentage of moderate mental illness? You're talking about serious mental illness. but a moderate case can be quite a problem.
Absolutely. And we we're not currently tracking that. We're definitely supporting those individuals if we're made aware of any symptoms that they're presenting or if they reach out for support. But I would say it's definitely over 50%, probably closer to 70 to 80% have moderate mental illness.
And of those, I'm curious, how many are receiving medication?
Yes, that was last point I had. So about 65% are currently receiving medications in custody, and similar percentage, 64%, have had a competency evaluation.
So that's a majority.
Yep.
Are there any in jail currently awaiting a competency in there because they can't get competency restored?
I don't know about the numbers, but we definitely have some of those folks. Western State and the other hospitals have been getting people in for restoration and evaluations much more quickly than they had in the past year to 2 years. So that's definitely improving. So people aren't having to wait that long. But we do then see a handful of people who come back who are still not restored and are probably not restorable. And then the option for a lot of those folks is to just have their charges dismissed and then they're released pretty quickly after their return.
I'm not sure who raised their hand first, but we'll
was
start with
Dan.
Bertie.
Oh, okay. Well, my quick question was, is this excluding those individuals with substance abuse disorder?
It's excluding those with just a substance use disorder. So many of these individuals have a serious mental illness of like a schizophrenia spectrum disorder or bipolar disorder, as well as a substance use disorder. But yeah,
So it's just excluding the pure substance abuse.
yes.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. And thanks, Hannah, for the presentation here this morning. So my question, I've got several, but I'll start with one. You had brought up that there's a not as much of a wait time to get into Western State. And I think those numbers have gone down a little bit in terms of how long it takes to get in. My question is to the True Blood decision and what your perspective is on how things are working out at the Whatcom County level.
Yeah, I think that's a big question.
Sorry.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement in like potentially outpatient restoration and supporting those individuals there. Um, I think that we have a lot of folks who are going in for restoration for 30 to 60 days and then coming back and deteriorating while they're still waiting for their cases to be processed. And it's not really doing anybody any favors. It's great when we have individuals who are potentially refusing medications and we can get them to Western State or somewhere else to get them on some sort of treatment, but the reality upon their return is not super hopeful.
So are there many that get the competency restored without going to Western State right now?
So they either go to Western State or Maple Lane, a couple of their other inpatient facilities, but nobody's getting, at least in Whatcom County, restoration in an outpatient setting.
Oh, Dr. Wu?
This is just a clarification request. So initially you said like 31% with serious mental health disorder, and then there were some like 43 and 42% of violent crime charges and property and lower level assault. Was the 43 and the 42%, was that of the 31% or was that of the
Yes.
total?
Yes,
that was-
of the 31%.
Okay. So then, and if, is it correct if 31% have serious mental health disorders, and I think you said 70 to 80% had moderate mental illness disorders? To me, that adds up to like 100%.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. I would say that is a good question. So, moderate and serious, I would say probably 70 to 80%.
Okay.
But I do think that close to 100% have some sort of diagnosis, especially for including substance use disorders as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, did you have other questions?
Yeah, observation then questions. So this information is very consistent over the years from what we've been or what we've had reported to the task force in terms of the percentages and of folks that are experiencing mental health illness and substance use disorder. So I guess my question, Hannah, is for you, is that how well or not well are we tapping into resources that we currently have that could help address these situations, whether they're co-occurring comorbidities with substance use disorder or mental health illness? And what I'm thinking of in particular is the drug court housing. I think it's located on DuPont. It's over that away from where I live. Is that being utilized to its fullest extent? Is the Ann Deacon Center being utilized to its fullest extent? Is the LEAD program an actor in this, in the work that you do? Are these systems meshing, or do we need to do further work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that in the past year or so, there's been a lot of improvement in coordination and collaboration amongst various parties. LEAD is a big factor in some of the decisions that we make. We refer a lot of individuals to LEAD. We refer individuals to Lake Whatcom Center's HEART team, which provides, crisis care, and they're able to do kind of like a rapid entry into getting a behavioral health assessment completed once somebody's released. I think that recovery court is a lot further along and able to do a lot more for our individuals than, say, mental health court and mental health sentencing alternative, just because they're able to do, I don't know, they're able to act more quickly. We see a lot of success with those individuals going to substance use treatment and getting out of jail more quickly than individuals who have primarily a serious mental illness.
So I had like a follow-up question in terms of, are there waiting lists to get into LEAD and mental health court?
There are, to an extent. Usually we see people who are just ineligible for various reasons based on their charges or just their behaviors, past behaviors and experiences with various systems. So for the few that are eligible, there is sometimes a waiting list. But usually it's just not that many people are eligible.
But isn't it also that we don't have the staffing or the resources or the judge capacity, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. I think there's only so much capacity for mental health court, especially one compared to the other. The one that does municipal court, or district court, one of the two, has a lot more openings versus the ones where we're taking on more serious charges and individuals who have been in the system for a long time. That capacity is not enough for the individuals that we have.
And when you say capacity, oh, I see we have, Jake, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in about the mental health courts. Jake Bewish with District Court. I know with the municipal court, there is capacity. It can be a challenge to get those to referred in district court. Very often there is like a felony drop down, so it's a reduction, so it's a little more incentive to get that enrollment. So municipal court has had that challenge. And I will say, I think an element there about the list to get into district court, mental health court it's also tied into, there has to be an agreement with all parties, prosecution, public defense. So it's not just that we're putting up that there are barriers, it's just that there's got to be an overall agreement there. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Bertie?
Yes, I was wondering about the folks that you said go to Western or similar locale and get their competency restored and then come back and relapse. Is that predominantly from their unwillingness to continue medication? And my question is, if that's so, what are the potential options in that setting? Are there any for enabling them to continue on medication without the power of Western State?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say for those who do become more symptomatic upon their return from restoration, it's primarily because of not wanting to take medications and continue with them. We have done a lot to reduce as many barriers as possible to make sure that individuals are getting that medication if they are wanting it. So if potentially they're very vulnerable and there's a risk of them diverting their medication and giving it to somebody else, then we will do a crush order. So they take their medication because they're willing to take it. They just have to have it in a different form. If we're able to get them on an injection and it's necessary, then we'll do a long-acting injectable. So that will help with medication adherence. And try to get as many parties involved as possible. If they're potentially connected with an outpatient provider or Grace or Lead and they have good relationships with them, we'll invite those parties in to have a conversation with us to see if we can get them on board with continuing with treatment.
Dr. Wu?
I have a question for Jake if he's still there. He disappeared. Oh, there he is. Okay. So just a clarification, you said that it would require all parties to be in agreement for a patient to go to mental health court. Is that specific for district court or is that both for district and municipal court?
For both.
Okay.
Yeah, so typically the public defender would refer them. They're screened in by the coordinator, Robin Willens, and then also has to be agreed upon by the prosecutor's office as well as kind of a package that it moves forward to the court.
And when you say all parties, does that also include like the victims, or do you mean, or is it just the
I'm sorry.
prosecutor? And the...
Yeah, prosecutor, defense, and obviously the
Okay.
defendant. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that since the referral comes from the public defender's office, that the disagreeing party that prevents that from going forward is usually the prosecutor's office?
Well, they also have to have, be evaluated and be appropriate, and have an assessment to make sure that, they do qualify. So that could be also a hurdle to cross. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a sense what fraction of people get stopped at which hurdle?
I don't at this point. I apologize. I'd have to check in with Robin.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I'm wondering, Eric, Richie, do you want to add anything here?
What would you like me to add?
Well, I mean, just to Dr. Wu's point about, the prosecutor recommending or not recommending. Do you have any comments on that? Or?
Sure. Yeah, I'll add something to that. So we have criteria that we set in place based on how dangerous the situation is, or basically what makes sense. We often take into consideration how victims feel, of course, but it's our criteria and the types of cases that we consider most heavily. As Jake mentioned, a lot of the times what we have is our cases that are felonies, that we turn into misdemeanors to reduce them as such to fit into this program. We do that for a number of reasons. We think it's important that people get the help. We think that will protect the public in the long run if they're helped. And so, of course, we look at it that way too. I don't think there are a lot of people that are stopped that you're thinking shouldn't be stopped from getting into the program. We want to get as many people in as we can.
Thank you, Eric. In the essence of time, I just have one more question, and it involves Alexis Ha, and it's an issue with whether people who are on home monitoring and not in jail, that they sometimes lose their Medicaid eligibility due to the miscommunication maybe between the jail roster and the MCO. I wonder if Alexis, or can you comment, or maybe ask Hannah to comment on that based on what our previous discussion?
Yeah, I can, excuse me, I can comment a little bit on that. I did get some more information. And so what happens in outpatient level, usually this is resolved before someone admits to an inpatient stay. Individual goes to seek services and they're told their insurance is inactive. That happens whenever the data is reported, usually through JBRS, to healthcare authority is who determines whether or not basically the insurance gets suspended. Then if the individual does not call and clarify the difference in their incarceration status, if you will, if they don't do that within 30 days, their insurance can be completely revoked. From what I hear, this is happening less often in the more recent information that I've received, but it is still, sometimes a barrier. And I know we're looking at the differences of mitigating some of that with the Medicaid waiver as well. But how I understood it, based on a recent conversation, was that it involves some specific types of programming in the system and how it gets reported. The programming isn't super supportive of differentiations between, physically incarcerated, down at the jail, downtown, or on home monitoring. And then we can talk about different reasons for home monitoring as well. And that's another factor. But yeah, so it's encouraging that maybe it's not happening as often as it was compared to when I was in outpatient recovery centers, but it sounds like it is still occurring and they're working to try and catch some of that. So that's what I have.
Okay. Well, anything else in the interest of time? I think
I
we
do
talked-
have one other
go ahead.
data point that I think is really important for us to be aware of. For individuals with serious mental illness, they are spending an average of 79 days in jail versus individuals without serious mental illness are staying in jail for about 37 days. So it's more than double. And that's from the past 18 months or so of releases for all individuals.
So just one final question, Hannah. Is any of this data available like to the public or accessible in any way?
Not right now. If anybody would like it to be, I can always send it to people, or we could have it come up with a way for it to be more readily available. But this is just our internal data that I pull usually monthly.
All right. I think we might consider that. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Hannah,
Yeah, thank you all.
and all the good questions. So appreciate it. I'm going to make an executive decision and defer my state legislative actions till the end of the meeting if we have time. So with that, why don't we go on to the Work Center Behavioral Health Pilot Program and Reentry Demonstration Initiative, and I'll turn it over to Raylene.
One moment, just trying to unmute and find my video and all of that good stuff. I think this was going to be a quarterly update by the sheriff's office. So I am wondering if that is something that actually Jill has her hand up. So I'm gonna,
Hi, everyone.
to-
Joining us today is Lieutenant Barry Level with the Sheriff's Office. He's here to present this report.
thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks, Raylene. As Jill said, my name is Barry Lovell. I'm one of the lieutenants in the jail, filling in for Chief Erickson, who's out of state for some training. Briefly, I'm going to go over the background of the program, how it started, what some successes were through the first run through it, and some proposed changes, and how we hope to evolve the program moving forward. Some or maybe all of you guys may know that this was conceptualized back in 2022 by our members of the Lifeline Communications Group. Presented it to, I believe it was Chief Erickson at the time, and it just kind of evolved from there. What was originally decided was this was going to be a 6-week program where we would interview some of our inmates and see who was interested, who would qualify. And it came down originally, it was 6 people, and then it was reduced to 5. And in talking to Sergeant Freeman and the Lifeline Communications staff, it was highly successful. Of the 5 people that graduated the program, 3 are still in custody. 1 has since been sent to prison, and 1 is released to the community. And as I understand it, talking to Hannah and Joey, that he is still connected to the program outside of jail. So I would consider that a pretty significant success. Moving forward, there are hurdles that we're going to have to overcome. We have to acknowledge that we have our mental health RFP out, so our medical provider is likely going to change, and that might change some of our staff. We hope it doesn't, but that could create some roadblocks for us moving forward. So one of the notes that I received from Chief Erickson and Lifeline was support down the road, whether it's in the matter of personnel or financially. These are some things that are going to need to be strongly considered, because as it was for this first trial through, the efforts were made by Lifeline outside of their normal expected duties. These were people taking time out of their normal lives to accomplish this success. So I don't think that can be underscored enough. Back to the new program, it's going to move from 6 weeks to 10 weeks. There'll be daily staff-led sessions that will include substance use disorder. They're going to bring in a professional to have those discussions. There'll be daily peer-to-peer discussions and group sessions. One piece that we're talking about trying to do is bring in outside resources like Goodwill or education programs through the community college. And the sheriff just connected me with a Teamster union member just earlier this week to see if we could bring in folks like that to have discussions about potential jobs as they transition out. All of those are exciting opportunities for folks that, in my history here working at the jail, these are just not things that people had the opportunity to really get their hands on. And so I think that's another success. Another change for the 10-week program is there's going to be a longer, more bolstered process for onboarding. The interview process will probably start with our classifications folks coming up with a list of people that would qualify based on their history, their behavior history while in custody, maybe their criminal history, their housing history. Are they going to be a good fit? And then that'll progress into having interviews or meetings with the Lifeline folks. Why do they want to get in the program? What do they hope to gain out of it? I mean, are they truly vested in this, in the program? And because I think that will lead to greater successes. I believe everybody's aware that the next program, we're going to try and find a group of women to participate. In our last class, I watched Caleb's video earlier today, and he talked about the design of the housing space that people are in. We actually changed the layout of the bunks, making it a more open unit, painted the unit a more, dare I say, appealing or happier color at the at the recommendation of Lifeline. I intentionally put this background behind me. This is an actual photo that we have in the female unit that we intend to use, working with a local well-known photographer who he didn't donate for free, but he gave us a very significant break to have this printed up, and it's a 16 by 8 mural that's on an entire wall in that female housing unit. So it's a beautiful picture. It's really quite impressive that we have community partners that are wanting to work with us moving forward. We hope that this is something we can continue in the new facility as we talk about planning and trauma-informed design and textures and stuff like that. Current status, development phase is complete. There is an MOU in place with Evergreen Goodwill, and we're working on the same with the with community college, sorry. And then, sorry, I got to refer back to my notes. I can only hold so much information in my wee little brain at a time. Yeah, and then so to kind of close a little bit, we could talk about the successes that we had, and that's the folks that are graduating and staying connected once they're out of custody. You know, it was noted by the behavioral health staff that depression and anxiety was significantly reduced during the pilot program, and I can only assume that will be even greater success in a 10-week program. And they noted a readiness for these individuals that were involved, ready to change the path that their life has been on previously that led them to coming into jail. What challenges we have moving forward is the staff bandwidth. I mentioned earlier that Lifeline was basically, they were working off the books to make this happen. And I happened to be assigned to the work center, so I know that there was people here late in the afternoon and early evening and making sure that this program was a success. So we need to, be grateful and applaud them for that, and, support maybe growing the number of people we have dedicated to this moving forward. How are we going to define success moving forward and dare I say, sell this program so it can be financially supported as we move into the new facility? I'm in some of the discussions when they talk about the jail planning, and it is routinely said that we need to have, in trauma-informed design in all of our housing units, and so that we can participate in expanded programs like this. And then again, staffing and resources can't be underscored enough. If you can be an advocate for it. And I think that's kind of what I got to cover. I know it's not quite as high level as what Caleb would normally get you, but as I said, I'm filling in as best I can, but I'll answer any questions that anyone might have, if I can.
Tori?
Yeah, I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that report, Lieutenant. And I hear staffing issues, staffing, and I'm wondering if there's been any thought about approaching the colleges for help with that. We have a pretty significant practicum program, and also want to talk a little bit about the cooperative learning program, which might be able to tailor specific types of things to sort of help with anything that people can do while they are working toward getting a license. I want to call it free labor, but I also know that it does take a little bit to supervise folks. But I would, I know that the college would be interested in that as well, particularly with our behavioral health programs. Not sure what the liabilities on all of those would be, but we do carry liability insurance on our students.
Can I get some clarification on staffing? Are you talking correction staffing or Lifeline or behavioral health staffing, or both?
I can't speak to the jail portion of that, although we do have a criminal justice program up here. So the lifeline type, lifeline requirements might be one area. So that could be something they could reach out to us for that. But there's growing interest from a student perspective to work within the criminal justice system, particularly in this type of atmosphere that you are telling us about with the pilot program.
My thoughts, according to Barry, is as we start working our way through the RFP for medical and mental health, that will be a driving force for the number of staff assigned to the jail. As everybody's aware, the county is going through a budget crisis, so asking for more money, more staffing is difficult at best. As far as correctional staffing, I think what you're insinuating is bringing in non-correctional staff to support maybe not all the jail related, the safety security stuff, but there is, dare I say, an intake person that could do a pre-book or stuff like that. There are other jails that operate that way. One of the hurdles that we'll have to overcome is the Teamsters, the union issues, and how they're rolled into that, and that is no small undertaking. I used to be a steward for us, and it's cumbersome at best, but we're aware that we have staffing issues. We've honestly, in my 22, 23 years collectively, I think we've been fully staffed. It's definitely less than 1 year combined. So we've never been fully staffed operating, and to see what our staff does to make things happen is pretty impressive, really. And we've expanded our efforts to try and bring more people in. I love to hear that people at the community college are more interested in working in the corrections environment, whether it's a corrections deputy or not. It's just it's been difficult over the years to try and bring people on board. So it's nice to hear that. We've recently got on to Indeed, and that's shown a pretty significant jump. But of all the people that apply for a job in law enforcement, it's generally about a 5 to 10% return out of you hire one out of 10 basically. So it's difficult. And did you have another question in there? And I want to make sure I address them all.
No, I think you addressed them all, and I certainly get the challenge with the unions, and there's probably smarter people there with you as yourself, learning how to sort of make it palatable and still make the facility operate safely for people.
Right. Any other questions?
I had a question. So, Hannah, the statistics that you cited earlier were for the jail, including Division Street?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So I was wondering how some of those statistics broke out for the people at Division Street, especially related to serious mental illness.
It depends. And Barry, maybe you could speak to kind of the classifications and the separation between the main jail and the work center, but we do tend to see a lot more individuals at the main jail downtown who have serious mental illness because they have to have more observation and direct connection with our behavioral health staff, and so they're not safe to be housed over on Division Street. But if they are being treated and they're stable enough, and classifications on the correction side feels that they are able to be housed at the work center, then we do have some individuals who are over there who have serious mental illness.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, Hannah. Our goal for housing anyone is always, in the least restrictive housing possible. Back when the work center was open, the goal was to keep it, all misdemeanors. And I can promise you that is not the case these days anymore, because, we were supposed to operate this this building for 8 years, and that was a good 15 years ago. We were supposed to have it replaced, and we're still having the challenge of coming to the goal line to have a new jail built to this day. Hannah's right about classifications is heavily involved. Both of our new classifications officers, they're the first ones to ever be able to, classifications training is hard to find, and we finally got our folks to some training earlier this year, and you can absolutely see the change in their education and training and how we're managing inmates at both facilities, but more specifically downtown. We used to have most of our units on second floor on some form of lockdown, whether it was quarter time, half rack, 23-1. We had one unit that was operating as what we call GP, that's open, basically 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Now we have all but one that are operating, open that way, and then the other is 23-1. The freedoms that affords the inmate population to manage their day, being out of their cells, has been noticed by our staff, and so those have been big wins. But speaking specifically to how we get people out of the work center and back to the least restrictive housing possible, even if we've got somebody with the, dare I say, a Class A felony, if they've been in custody for, a significant period of time, 6 months to a year, and they've shown good behavior, we're going to give them an opportunity, likely, to be out at the work center, and if they manage themselves appropriately, and then they get to stay here. If they don't, it's we send them back downtown. When it comes to the folks, and part of the classification and rehousing to the work center involves medical and mental health. Is it a recommendation coming from medical or mental health that they go to? Because all of the units out here are open pods, so they're going to be housed in the smaller units, some maybe 2 or 3 people, and in the larger units upwards of 20 to 25. So we work pretty closely, very closely with the medical folks and mental health, and who's going to be a good fit. And I feel like we've done a really exceptional job of that in the last number of months since we've got our new classification folks working diligently on that. Did that cover the entire question that I gave you, Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
I see Dr. Wu, Alexis Foz, and then Dan Hamel. Questions?
Oh, this is a quick one. Lieutenant Lovell, are you free to share the name of the photographer so that we can thank them?
I don't know if I can. Sure, it's Peter James. Peter James, local guy.
Yeah, it looks like his work.
He has been very kind, very generous. Been educated me a lot on the process of how he goes about his business, and for real quick backstory is, of all the pictures that he publishes, he only prints them 100 times, and he puts a stop on it, and that's to control the inventory and how much is out there, and I'm very grateful for his work. And I worked with Lift Techs locally to get these printed up. And we've actually had a private donor that paid for the printing of the actual on the paper for this picture behind me. So there's been community partnership that people have stepped in to help, because it's, like I said, it's not free. Alexis?
Yeah, I had a quick question about some of the professionals you mentioned were you were hoping to kind of bring into some of the conversations on the project program. I'm curious if there would be an opportunity, should there be the opportunity for more staffing, of course, to include someone that could operate kind of like as an employment specialist. So talking about the types of jobs that are out there are great, but in spirit of reentry and community reintegration more specifically, I think that could also be supportive. Obviously, a huge advocate for all behavioral health and mental health and substance use services, but sometimes I think that the occupational training piece gets missed.
That has been part of the discussions. It's a transitional, not care, but there's a transition piece when we hope to get folks at least involved or aware, hey, just know that these opportunities are available to you. What I feel like we have between now and whenever this new jail gets open is an opportunity to learn. I'm open, and I know the sheriff is open to trying new things as long as they fit within the safety and security box. I know Caleb's super supportive of it. What does that look like as we're trying new things? I don't know. I'm a big fan of failing forward. If that's if things like that are presented, I'm willing to consider a lot of things. So it's difficult here. Well, it's difficult at both facilities because there's no space. So as we plan with the new building, there has absolutely been discussion about a transition part of the building that helps people connect with services, whether it's opportunity council or what housing, whatever it is. We'd love to get those conversations going and how we can get more folks like that involved.
Yeah, we've seen a big turnaround when implementing some more referrals to services like vocational rehabilitation here. When I operate the low intensity residential program over on Girard. So that's something we've been doing more frequently, and we're seeing some higher success rates with clients because of that.
I don't know if this has any bandwidth. I'll throw this out there. With our current phone provider for the MA population, they have a software program called Adovo, and you can Google it and find it online. It's an education program. David Goldman uses it because he can put his proprietary documents and part of the education stuff. I got to imagine that we could do similar things for job training. I mean, food service, food handlers permits, stuff like that. To me, that would be a relatively easy underhand. Finding the person that's got the bandwidth to take that on would be a challenge as well. And we're going out for RFP for a new phone provider at the end of this year anyway, but that will always be part of the discussion. What kind of educational software can we get these folks exposed to, or transitional or job training, or whatever the case may be? There are people incarcerated that have spent thousands of hours going through courses, and you could just see, because there's reports that we can run that, hey, John Doe has done 150, 500 courses, and they're not super long, but there are people that are definitely not just sitting in here watching, the paint dry, so to speak. So.
Thank you,
And
Lieutenant.
and Barry, I don't know if you had a chance to talk about that we're actually having talks with trade unions right now to come in to talk about how some of their employees who have been incarcerated or otherwise have really entered their apprenticeship programs and been highly successful.
I didn't get deep into that, other than that is an avenue that you presented to me to have discussions with the carpenters unions and whatnot. I think it's a great opportunity. Unfortunately, in my years working here, talking to people, they're dealing with the stigma of they've been in jail. Nobody wants to hire them, and that, I don't believe that's the case. Maybe I'm a little bit naive when it comes to that, but if the more success stories like the Carpenters Union gentlemen, you shared their contact with me, that can be shared with them, I think that's something that we could absolutely utilize and maybe make them part of the behavioral health program as job training, or like I was just talking about through Adovo and whatnot. But yeah, we've had the colleges come in. We have a young lady that's coming in and doing her capstone project right now, going through Homer's Odyssey with a select group of people that are volunteering to just they wanted to stretch their brains. So there's desire out there for people to do different things. So the more exposure we can get them to job opportunities or education, I think is a great path to go.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Lieutenant, for the presentation. Real quick, one comment, and then I guess more questions. But The Carpenters Union rep Lisa Marks was just appointed to the Planning Commission for the City of Bellingham last night during our council meeting. So we, and we've met, and she presented to the Behavioral Health Committee probably 6 months ago. And so that value of vocational rehabilitation is pretty high priority for the work that we do. Question, Lieutenant, I guess you had thrown out some terms earlier in your remarks, 23 and 1,
Okay.
something about a rack or a half rack. I just want to, this is a public meeting, this is recorded, and I just want to make sure that we, provide for the public what those things mean, just so they have a frame of reference. I know that we're kind of insider baseball right now, but I want to make sure that the public has information on those terms.
No, I appreciate that. It's terms we use and how much of their day somebody is locked down or not. So in general terms, when they're not in a, dare I say, a 23 and 1 or half rack or quarter rack, they're out from, like I said, 7 to roughly 10. And that's based on what staff needs to do. There are periods of time during the day where we lock folks down for head count or certain units, so we could do what we call intensives or cell checks. So 23 and 1 would be a group of people that are literally locked down in their cell 23 hours of the day. Half rack during the 7 to 10, they're out half of the day. Basically, they'll be out in the morning. Lunch will get served. They'll get locked down, and then the other half of the unit would be racked out. And quarter rack, we break up the housing units into, a quarter of the cells and a quarter part of the day, usually about 3 hours each. So, but like I said earlier, our classification unit has changed a lot of that. Most of our housing units on the second floor, and that's where our biggest housing units are out, what we call GP. They're out from 7 to 10. That's how it was operated when I first started. And, when it was when there was a butt in every bed on second floor, that's 128 people being managed by one deputy. Now, because of the distillation of who we bring into custody, having a more severe, alleged crimes, we now have a second person on second floor, an assist. So there's 2 people monitoring what's going on the floors. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks. I just think that just for the benefit of, folks who are not familiar with this kind of, how you classify and how you operate, it's just beneficial. That's all. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The other thing I think is of note is that we do have dorm housing. The work center, all of the units out here, all 11 of them are dorm style housing where there's bunk beds. They're behind one door, but they have, unfettered access to toilet, shower, sink. We ask them to be in the rack after, 10 o'clock. And that's they follow that rule. The trade-off is they go back downtown. So there's, that's kind of how we manage that. And there are open pods downtown as well, but not as many as there are out here. Good question, though.
Thank you. Brian?
You're muted.
You're muted, Brian.
Now, this is for Barry or Tank. Do you ever have had peer support groups at Division Street or even in the jail, where somebody leads it who has lived experience with mental health, and they just share and support, each other and telling their stories? I've heard in the past that they did have that.
In the past, I thought, Sheriff, is that you?
Yeah, I was going to say, in fact, the representative from the Carpenters Union, he and several other of his coworkers have lived experience. And that's one of the reasons why I was really interested in having them talk to our inmates at both facilities. But we certainly have in the past, but that's something that I'm always open to, Brian.
I know NAMI could help. We should have a separate conversation about that, about how that might work. So, Barry, do you have any comment on that, or?
Over the years, we haven't had groups that have regularly signed up, but I remember when I was a floor deputy, we had a gentleman that he used to come in. He actually had a poster board made up of all of his booking photos, and they filled a poster. And once he was clean and sober, and he went through the jail clearance process, he'd come in and we'd have him basically hold court with folks and talk about his life and the struggles that he dealt with, and then the successes after the fact. I don't even want to say it was a
Did you read
COVID
that
thing that
memo?
slowed that down.
Yeah.
The email.
I don't know.
But there's just fewer people that are asking about that. But I'd echo what the sheriff had to say and support that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah, I can add on that too. We do have AA meetings that happen regularly at, I think, both locations. Correct me if I'm wrong, Barry or Tank, but they come in, and then also part of our pilot program and any continued programming that we will be offering involves a lot of peer support. And we have a peer support specialist on our team who regularly tries to engage individuals in those conversations.
I don't know if the sheriff's still here. We have a gentleman that comes in that does haircuts for inmates. And he does it for free. I'm kicking myself because he's a friend of ours, and I can't remember the name of the program, but he comes in and he talks about, his life story, and he gives folks a fresh cut, and he talks to them about life and life choices, and he's super, super encouraging gentleman, and just treats people with dignity and respect. So that's just another example of how we're just trying to evolve and show some people some light. So
Thank you, Barry. Any other comments or questions in regards to this topic? All right, thank you. I wanted to briefly circle back to Alex's comments on reentry, and I know that a lot of this topic on reentry and navigation focuses a lot of times on mental health, especially when we're doing it as a joint legal and justice committee. I know that the struggles are real with space and staffing at our current facilities, and that's something that we're hoping that as we move to another facilities that we have the ability to provide more education and options. Years ago, I'm thinking Arlene might remember some of it. We had somebody from the Goodwill come in and speak about what they were doing to assist individuals with finding jobs, finding a suit, finding education. And they were providing basically a gift certificate, training on resumes, and being able to circulate with in our community on what places do hire individuals that have convictions on their record. I know that is something that's still out there. Best practices on reentry and navigation have shown and proven that the recidivism rates are less when we have better reentry programs. So it is definitely things that we want to work on and move forward with, regardless whether that's behavioral health or an individual that just got into the system and needs help navigating out of the system so that they don't become circulatory and problems that we have in the future. So thank you so much for the presentation, Barry, and Tank's input on that. I really appreciate it. I think we're going to move on to the next topic, which I'm not going to have a lot more input on the True Blood decision, but I wanted to, oh, I see Barry's hand up, so I'm going to circle back to Barry.
I apologize. This actually has little to do with what I was presenting, but Hannah was asked a question about how many folks were awaiting restoration. And I fired that question off to our mental health staff, and the number is 9 to 10 who are awaiting restoration right now. And then there's another 4 to 5 that are awaiting evals to establish that process. So I just remember that question was asked, and I thought I'd be able to get you an answer. So I don't know who asked it, or don't recall who asked it, but that's the info you guys were looking for.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
That kind of ties into the next topic, actually, which we did a report on the Legal and Justice Systems Committee in our May meeting on the True Blood decision. That was done twofold. One is because we've had so many different individuals coming into the task force and changes over the last couple of years that there was a lot of individuals that just really didn't know what the True Blood decision was or was about. So we had civil legal from the county prosecutor's office give a brief overview of the True Blood decision, which was a class action lawsuit involving the mentally ill individuals. I think a lot of people here are somewhat more familiar with it, but that was the overview that Chris Quinn gave on the delays to worsening mental health, the constitutional right to a speedy trial, and making sure that people were getting restored if they could be, and the funds that were involved in that. There was also the topic that Gockley spoke about, is the state's failure to comply with that True Blood decision and the millions of dollars of fines. And so we did get some money in fines from some of those True Blood cases. Some of that is sitting there in appeals, and we are waiting for the appellate courts to make decisions. Some of it is waiting for disbursement orders so that we can distribute it. In Superior Court in the clerk's office, we disperse funds based on court orders. If we don't have an order to disperse funds, we can't do that. But if there is an appellate decision, we can't do anything also if we don't have a decision from the appeals court. And then there was a grant with funding that Whatcom County applied for. The exec's office had information on that. We reached out to Kayla Bressler-Scott with the exec's office on what happened with that. And the grant that we applied for last year, we did not get awarded for, but we were encouraged to reapply in 2025. When I reached out to Kayla to figure out what the status is, because the hope for some of those funds is that we would be able to use it for housing capital projects. And in doing so, that would tie into a lot of the other behavioral health programs, LEAD, and areas that we would want to be able to provide those housing units so that we have transitional housing and shelter for like LINK and other diversion programs. Those programs aren't necessarily going to work without that housing and shelter. However, we weren't told that we wouldn't get the grant if we reapplied for it. So the exec's office has every intent to reapply to answer some of the questions that were concerns on the transitional housing and shelter, but that hadn't opened up yet the last time I spoke with Kayla. And she said that as soon as we had more information on it, she'd be happy to report on any progress, because we do want to make sure we have those avenues to work on other diversion programs. So that's in a nutshell what I have to report on some of the questions that were brought up in the Legal and Justice meeting. And I'm happy to reach out to Kayla and Chris Quinn and have them report back again once we do have more information. Brian? You're muted.
How much money are we talking about in terms of what Wacomb's County share of that settlement? And do we have any sense of where that money might be going?
Are you talking about the money that was not awarded in the grant?
No, from the True Blood, from the True Blood settlement.
From the True Blood settlement, there was grant funding that the county applied for. I don't have the exact number on that, but I can reach back out and get the amount of what we asked for in the past and what we foresee to ask for moving forward, and return back to the group on that. On funds that we have in trust, I believe there was about $38,000 that is in the trust and registry on funds that have been paid to the county. And that, like I said, it's sitting in registry and trust until we have an order or direction on how that should be dispersed. So I know there was kind of a stalemate there. We need direction from the judges on how those funds should be dispersed, but the clerk's office does not draft the orders, and that would be done by prosecution or defense. I think defense at one time was working on some of that, but they were hoping to get some of those funds to go back to their clients. It didn't seem like that was the direction that was going to be, so we're still waiting on direction on that. On the other amount of funds, there could be a lot more money involved, but because that's all with the Court of Appeals right now, I can't give you an exact number because we don't know what that's going to look like until the appeal process is over. Any other questions or concerns? I will report back on this. It might be at the next quarterly Legal and Justice, because I think this is a topic that both Legal and Justice and Behavioral Health are interested in, especially when it will help with diversion and housing for those areas. But the next topic we've got is the update on committee work groups. And I believe we got reports from Bertie, Brian, and Dan.
Hi there, Cedric Johnson here. I'm stepping in for Bertie to give the behavioral health update. So hopefully, so we've given updates at the last couple of behavioral health committee meetings, and I realize that our legal and justice folks are not on those meetings. In the interest of time, I don't want to repeat too much, but hopefully people had a chance to see in the packet a charter that we have developed. And we were hoping to get that blessed or approved by the joint committees today. I don't know if we need a formal vote or not. It's listed as page 2 in the packet. It'll be page 4 on the PDF file. Rather than read through it, I thought I would maybe just hit some highlights, and then, happy to take any questions. But I will read our statement of purpose. Which we, and so again, this is what we came up with and are proposing, to develop data and information systems recommendations to further the goals of the Justice Project and the IPRTF, which aims to hold the county accountable for the results of the Justice Project and expenditure of appropriate funds, and to identify and recommend resources needed to support and implement the evaluation plan. Much of our work coincides with, especially in this first phase, the work that's being done by the Village Reach consultant. And we see that as being really good alignment. And so some of our specific responsibilities listed in the first few bullets there essentially summarize that. And then we see our work as including, sort of ongoing support to review and inform, advise on the implementation of the Village Reach plan, and then develop additional recommendations for communicating and implementing performance measurement plan, as well as further recommendations around, modernizing data systems, data collection workflows, and efforts. So hopefully that makes sense to folks. A few things that are out of scope, we thought it was important to call those out. I think the big thing is that, you know, we intend to continue working closely with the rest of the committee and of course with the county staff. And so we don't see ourselves developing budgets, pulling lists of data reports at the request of county staff, or doing any sort of generating our own reports or in-depth review of particular reports, except as we think it's helpful to inform our work. So again, really not intending to take on the sort of work of people who are in data systems at the county. We've been meeting mostly weekly. We've skipped a few, and we intend to sort of determine the need to meet virtually as needed indefinitely. And we do not have a chair or leader. We managed to do a sort of egalitarian approach, but the other members are Amy Hockenberry, Wendy Jones, Bertie Safford, and Dean White. Any questions?
I think you did a fabulous job. I'm not seeing hands.
I think, oh, go ahead.
No, I would just say it looks good. And Jill, do we have a quorum?
We do not.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, that's okay, I think. You know, we think this can be somewhat flexible as well. Certainly, if people have feedback or questions about the charter or the rest of our work that you think of later, feel free to reach out to me or any other member of the data work group.
Thank you. Any other reports from Brian or Dan, or I think Cedric probably covered it, but I just wanted to make sure we're not missing anything.
Well, from the diversion and reentry work group, we have been working on one specific issue, and that's the issue that Alexis brought up earlier about continual Medicaid coverage. We've also decided to do a little bit more research on best practices related, especially to reentry, and then come back to the group in a month or so. So we are going to take a little bit of hiatus until we have some very specific policies or best practices that we want to focus on, and that's going to take a little bit of research. So that's kind of where we're at. I do think we might consider doing a charter, though, like the data group did, because I think that would help focus our work going forward. So thanks, Cedric. That's a nice document.
Thank you. I have a question for lieutenant level. Are you still with us there, Barry? Maybe. Sheriff Tanksley?
Of course, I'm here. I'm here.
I figured you were. So this may be something that can be researched later on, but some of the conversations that we've had on best practices and how we can measure performance standards. Something that was recently brought up at a facilitators conference, because we're trying to get more data on assisting unrepresented individuals, was that they are looking at the Administration Office of the Courts found money for the facilitator program to provide tablets for the individuals and have preloaded questions on those tablets that will gather the data and be able to use that for performance measures and tools. And so that individuals that come in and meet with the facilitators would then be able to do a very short survey on that tablet that would auto-populate for the state on who's using the services, what services were the most beneficial. Is that something that could be used at the jail with the current tablet program that we could be using to do some of our data collection with inmates?
So if I hear you correctly, are the tablets going to be provided, or is this some type of integration of the existing tablets in order to collect the data?
No, this is tablets that are actually going to be provided to the facilitators through the administration office of the courts. They are going to narrow it down to some very specific questions and then utilize that information to come up with best practices and performance measurement tools for the facilitator program. And I'm just looking at it at a completely different angle. We already have inmates using tablets. Is that something that could be pre-programmed in these tablets?
Well, on the surface, I'm going to say that it probably could not be pre-programmed in the tablets, because with the tablets are issued by a particular service provider, and then we probably would have to modify each tablet in order to do that, and that might require a hefty sum. But on the contrary, I would be very interested in talking to AOC through you and that group in order to have those tablets inside both our facilities. I'm sorry, I have to turn my radio down. Inside both our facilities in order to extract data. So I think, as most people know, I'm 100% in support of trying to collect more data to make sure that we provide the best services that we can to the people that we have at the facilities.
Thank you.
Well,
Lieutenant Earl?
I might have missed the beginning of it. Can you give me a brief, go back to the beginning and tell me what you're trying to do?
So the administration office of the courts is trying to collect better performance measure tools for the facilitator program. And this is for unrepresented parties, usually involving minor adult guardianship, family law facilitators. So separate from the criminal justice system. But what they have found is they have funding to provide each facilitator program in the state with a tablet that they can do a survey with parties using the facilitator program to establish performance measure tools. My question is, we have inmates that have tablets already. Is that something we could somewhat replicate in the jail?
So for more clarification for me, are these survey questions, is this something that it's built into a software, or could it be, if I can get if I have a document that could be built into, I don't know, 6-10 question survey, that is something that our phone service provider can and has done. Now, if you're wanting to put an app on the tablet, I think the sheriff's probably right that there's going to be a fee there. However, I know that when David Goldman has expanded his work through the community college into the tablets, I don't think there was a fee associated with that. So let me do some digging and I'll get back to you, Raylene, the answer to that. I wouldn't close the door on it. How about that?
Now, it's like I said, it's just, I know that, sometimes when we're looking at data, we're also looking at what is working and what isn't working. And so being able to extract some of that information for performance measure tools might be beneficial. And
I'm looking at an email right now from this past weekend. We had 3 inmates participate in a Zoom group where they, with somebody from the college, and they went through and they did basically a virtual interview on tablets that were provided by the college. We pulled them out of their units, put them in an individual space, and they went through the process. So I wouldn't close the door. Let me find out.
Hey, Raylene, so it sounds to me that if AOC could provide the tablet, that might be the better route. And then that data is going directly to their tablets versus through a third party.
Right, and the funding that came out of this, it was very specific to the facilitator program. So, looking to see if there's different avenues to try to get funding for that might be a bigger ask. That's why I was looking at it from what can we use with what we currently have, and how could we integrate that, and maybe with use of simple survey questions and talking to the college and Goldman, that might be something we want to explore.
As far as tablets, this is going to sound, I don't know how well a tablet would work downtown. You know, great big concrete and steel building, and we don't have open Wi-Fi.
Okay.
With how the tablets operate as a proprietary system. So that might drive us in that direction. I totally get where the sheriff's trying to go, trying to keep our hands out of it as much as we can. And, you know, I appreciate that, because it's one less thing that we potentially ask our staff to do. But let me find out.
Okay.
Barry, that's a good point. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, sir.
About the Wi-Fi. I think we need better Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but Raylene, I'll always pitch for us if they're willing to put forth some money, that could pay for the Wi-Fi.
Right. Right.
But I
Now
imagine that installation cost is pretty profound.
It's not only the installation cost, it's having the people able to do it. We're stretching our IT fairly thin these days. But I think I actually need to wrap this up because we're getting closer to the end. So I need to check to see if there's other business. And Barry or Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to comment?
I was going to do this state legislative action, but I think to do it justice, it might take a little bit more than the time remaining. And there's not a, imminent time critical aspect to this presentation. So well, why don't we just move that to our next quarterly meeting?
That sounds great. Brian, I'm so sorry about that. I just realized that we were going to jump back to that.
No, I recognize that, this is something that could easily be moved. So I thought it's better to spend time on these. That's why I decided to punt on this. So.
Thank you for that. I didn't see anybody else that had other business, so I wanted to check with Jill to see if she could help us out with public comment.
Yes, we have one attendee today. If you'd like to speak to the committees, please virtually raise your hand now. Yeah, no hand is raised, and I don't see anyone present in our conference room.
I just had a comment. Dan, can you stay on for just a second after our meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. With that being said, I think we can adjourn, and Brian and Dan, enjoy.